Hello everybody, it's me, Far, and we're here with some Path of Exile 2. And I know, it's been a while since I put out a video, and that's because we've been working on what needed to be done for this one. This is the road to 100, what it took to get there, why it caused burnout, how I think the endgame could be changed, and maybe some tips about how we could do this more cheaply, and just some general tips about what you should be looking for in your waystones, precursor tablets, and build an atlas tree, should you choose to take on what is currently a gargantuan task within this game. We did this about as fast as it could be done, using the most expensive materials, and it still took an age. Coming up soon, GGG have said that they will be reducing the experience curve from 95 to 100, so we got it in before they made it easy. That being said, let's jump into the first chapter, which is how we actually did this. Starting off then, let's take a look at this Atlas passive tree. So, main themes that we're going for here are more magic monsters, more rare monsters, more explicit effect of our waystones, more effect of our precursor tablets. With our precursor tablets and our waystones, we will be grabbing as much XP as we can, and we want that to be multiplied up as much as we can. So, with that in mind, we grab round 2 expanding hordes, we go through to twin threats, and then all the way round to enigmatic intensification. Grab all the tablets effects, remnants of power for the 20% chance to double the effect of precursor tablets, with a load of 10% XP tablets that can get very spicy, 1 in 5 maps. And then yeah, all of the increased explicit modifier. Going round, we grab constant crossroads, just in the way, but we want to get round to grueling journey. This gives a lot of explicit modifiers when you start stacking up as lots of lines, which we can do across all of the precursor tablets. And last off, we grab unstable energies for that chance for 25% more effect of our XP gain. This gives us quite a lot of potential XP. You can be quite easily, with the right tower setup, getting up to 300% XP on your maps. Seeing less than 150% is really rare. That's only happening really if you're running sort of 30% maps, where you've only got one tower affecting the area. Looking over at the breach side, it's pretty standard setup, but take grasping hands to get more magic monsters. I would recommend getting at least 2 of the expeditions and grabbing the large explosion one. Oh yeah, in fact, I could just grab that already. You probably should be grabbing the number of explosives is 1 and not the disturbed rest. Then you can clear the expeditions really quick. I tend to ignore them because they've got some rippy enemies in them, so I personally don't run them at all. On the delirium side of things, more mirrors. And yeah, in fact, it's just the only one that really gives you much of a bonus there is the more mirrors, so that will just increase the mobs a bit. And I don't even bother running rituals, they are a time loss. So the only things that really matter are the middle bit, the breach, the expedition if you're feeling fruity, but I would say it's risky, and then the more mirrors if you're running just the breach and the delirium and ignoring. Yeah, the rituals just take too long, you don't get very much experience from them, and expeditions are too rippy, so just paying attention to this bit as far as the Atlas skill tree goes. Taking a look at what supplies we wanted to use. So you're going to end up using a lot of Grand Project precursor tablets to jump around your map and find decent tower configurations. This is a pain in the arse. Yep, we'll talk about the Atlas later. For your towers, you really do want to be getting 10% experience gain in your maps. These are a couple of divines each. Preferably that have shrines, increased shrines on them for your precursor tablets. Then in your breach tablets, increased monster density is great, but again, you definitely want that 10% increased experience gain. Additional breaches can also be quite good. These are quite expensive tablets. They end up costing about 4 divines each. Looking over at the maps, you definitely want to be running tier 16s. Tier 16 is double the experience of a tier 15. Because it closes the level gap by 1, your experience just doubles, pretty much how it works. So tier 16s are pretty much mandatory. You can do this with tier 15s. When we start talking about time, just double that time number and realize that you want to be, but then look at the cost, right? There's a cost and time offset to running these tier 16s that we'll see. With these though, you want to be running pack size. Pack size is more monsters, experience gain, and then if you can get more monster packs, pack size, additional packs, rare monsters, magic monsters, all of those things are great. These sorts of waystones, they're going to be setting you back about 4 divines each at the end league. Certainly were this league. However, they're a lot cheaper in the early league. So maybe some money making there. These are the sorts of maps that look like they should be okay, and then you realize they're not. This is a really rippy map, so it's got minus 10% player resistances and then 2 extra damages. This is the sort of things that you want to avoid. That and things like temp change isn't so bad now, although when you get caught by it, it actually sucks. And ignited ground is a bit rough as well. It can just take down your damage, but look for bad suffixes like that and don't risk running them. 2.5% XP loss at level 99 to 100 is about 2.5 hours gameplay. In fact, no, a bit less than that. It's about an hour and a half's gameplay, but you still don't want to be repeating that. It's a real kick in the nuts. So that's the sort of stuff you want to be looking for to run this, and you want to always make sure you've got your Omen of Incompetence on and active, because otherwise you will lose 6 hours of time. So that's really what I was looking at with the Waystones, the Precursor Tablets, and the Atlas. Looking at the build, I didn't do this until I got to a high-end build. Went for an attack speed based Invoker Monk. I know typically you would use crit on this because it will get you more single target damage. Attack speed got us through the maps faster. We're just coating the whole area in arrows. It's, you're just running around just doing this, and then the map is cleared and you're having a good time. There's 100 hours footage of me doing that. If you wanted to check that, I'm not going to put in gameplay footage here. It's all on the channel. So you want to be looking for something fast attack speed that can clear the mobs in one hit, that doesn't have an issue with map bosses, and that preferably has good tank. I found that running about 6,500 shield, I think we died a handful of times, like 4 or 5 times between 97 and 100. Somewhere over 6,000 shield is going to keep you safe to near enough everything, apart from running into a pack of exploding guys that you've made explode off screen, and then you're talking to stream and you run into them and then you die. It'll save you from pretty much everything but that. You'll have a couple of, shit your pants moments, but that just reminds you that you're alive during the 100 hours. That's not necessarily a bad thing. So that's really what I'd be looking at on the build. Got to be defensive enough to not die, and it's got to be fast clearing, preferably range. Or just screen clearing and fast and tanky. It doesn't necessarily need big single target, so you can sacrifice some of that to make sure that you're going to be safe and not waste time. That's what I recommend anyway across the Atlas build. The other things. How long did it all take? Well, it took a while. These are all the streams we started 3 weeks ago. We ended here with a almost 10-hour stream. The total hours spent were 103.3 hours, and this was grinding from 97 to 98. That's a lot of time. That is all time spent exploring and running Atlas maps. That does not include trade time. However, trade time is all done in bulk anyway, so that doesn't add much to it. You could, in theory, grind that out in 7 or 8 days, right? If you just sat and you did nothing else apart from eat, sleep, and play the game. But that is an incredible amount of time, and risked time as well. Highly risked time, where any death is going to add time on that. I think with no deaths, we probably would have managed to get that down to around 90 hours, maybe a little bit more, 95 probably. But that's a hell of a time investment required, and even more of an expense, which we're going to move on to next and have a little talk about that. So as we talk about the cost, we'll open this section up showing the divine to mirror at the moment. It's 2,988 divines to a mirror. And let's talk a little bit about how much this cost. I've pulled up on the stream how many waystones we actually ran over this endeavor. So as I said about these waystones earlier, they're about 4 divines. You can get slightly more expensive ones, which were 5 or 6, and some of those waystones were indeed just cheap 15s we were using to jump from tower to tower. So I'm going to take an average cost of the waystones at 4. The tablets were between 2 and 4, depending on how good they were. Going to take an average cost of 3, and we used round about 150 of these as we went through. So we're going to pull up the calculator, everybody's favorite app. Here it is, and we're going to quickly add up some numbers. So we're going to go 117, which is how many waystones we ran on the last stream, plus 1026. We're going to times that by 4. There's our divines for our maps. And then to this, we are going to add 3 times 150, which is 450. I can do that bit in my head. Got a bit of faith there. That brings the total cost up to 5,022 divines, making the cost of this endeavor a little over, well, let's just divide that by 2,988. 1.68 mirrors. That was the total cost to run this. That is absolutely extortionate. You can get cheaper keys on the trade. You might be able to pick 1 or 2 up for a few chaos, maybe even 30 chaos. You might even get lucky and pick one up for 50 or 60 exalts or something. However, you are not going to be able to get the volume of keys you need to do this. And those keys are being snapped up by resellers from TFT all the time. This drives a need to go to TFT to be able to do this in any decent amount of time and buy from a bulk seller, which is why this price gets so high. However, early game, there's not so much of a market for them. If you can stockpile these things early game, I think this could be a really good low early league investment. There's about 200, 300 people that are going to 100 more so. These supplies cut the time in half. People value the time. If we hadn't used these supplies, I would have been running this. If we did this with tier 15s, for example, I would have been running this until literally the 29th of August to get to level 100 on one character. That's really fundamentally the difference it makes. So I think these could be a really, really, really good early league investment, providing things don't change too much with the XP curve. That being said, very expensive. Wouldn't recommend this. Actually would not recommend this. You'd have so much more fun with 5,000 divines making builds and playing the game through from level 70 to level 97 30 times over, making different builds and experiencing playing the game in different ways. That would be a lot more fun, I would say, to most people than just smashing your face against grinding to 100. It's completely, and it's just, when you die, it's sort of, oh, there's another 100 divines I've just lost. I've just lost 100 divines worth of experience. It's just, it's not nice, and you can just watch your divines just draining down. This wouldn't have even been possible without support from the guild that pushed me to do it. Well, though I pushed to do it, the guild supported me in doing it and actually seeing what this was like. So big shout out to those guys for helping out with this one. Otherwise, this isn't even possible for one person to do by themselves. It's nuts. Anyway, rant almost over. We've got a couple more things I want to rant about. One of them is the Atlas. Here we are on the Atlas, and this is having just run as many waystones as we've done. In fact, let me turn that off the screen now. Found myself finding some real issues with this. I think as a user experience, it's pretty terrible. As a story, as something that tries to engage you in, oh, I'm a conquistador off exploring the jungles of a foreign land. Yeah, that's great, but actually, I think people play these games to mostly farm maps and farm loot, and particularly with Path of Exile, I think it's quite big in the community to do sort of, I'm going to farm 50 of this, I'm going to test X of this. I do a lot of that. I see content creators for Path of Exile 1 do a lot of that. And there is such limited capacity to do that with the way this Atlas is designed. And what I've got here, I think, will hopefully highlight why it's bad. So if you're looking to juice maps and get maximum profit, maximum currency, you're going to be looking for tower configurations that look something like this at the very least, where you've got a crossover of maps in the middle that all get hit. This is good. This is what you want to see. This is quite rare. As you're exploring and you're looking and you say, oh, look, there's a tower there. I'm going to go forwards and I'm actually going to go and uncover it. What you often find is there's a lake or a mountain or somewhere that just you cannot spawn any maps. Meaning all the traveling you've done, the 10, 15 minutes you've spent getting there just feels wasted, deflating. It doesn't feel good. It definitely doesn't. Now, when you do find a configuration like this, and you've just put your 9 very expensive tablets in here and spent your 30 divines, you're then left with another bit of a tough choice. The maps in the middle, you know these are going to be good, they're going to be all 90%, you're going to run them. There's going to be maps that are sort of between 2 towers, these are going to be 60%, they're going to be good. But they're also random maps. There's going to be maps you just don't really want to run. Myers, Val Foundries, Augury, Seepage, maps that are just F tier, and they pop up so much. And what I've found as I've gone around, if I look back, these are the maps that have just sort of, well, Crypt is actually okay, but these are 30% maps, which I don't like running either. The maps that have been left in a lot of places are crappy maps like that, or these are 30% ones up here, which I also, again, don't like running. That's the other problem. You end up with a tower that's sort of, okay, it's got the crossover in the middle, but all this stuff at the back feels almost wasted. Like these 30%, I don't want to go and put a 4 divine map for 30% XP gain. It feels, it's really hard to balance. I don't feel like the towers really add much to the endgame experience. I don't feel like exploring this Atlas adds anything to the endgame experience other than the illusion of choice. And the choice, it's not real. It's not real. There's 30, 40 maps. I've got 1,000 things I can click on, but the choice is between 40. And what I'm trying to do is just find an area where I can say, I want to add this juice to my maps. And this is a really, honestly, frankly, terrible way of doing it. Path of Exile 1 was much better. Played other games that have the juice where you apply items to your map and that gives you the juice you want and you can play the game how you want. This experience is, it almost feels like a badly told story, and going through that many maps, I can't see how this can persist into being the long-term Atlas endgame. I really don't. I think it has to change. Be free. I disagree with me if you like. I'd love to chat about that in the comments because I'm quite passionate about this, having now gone through it, that this is just not a good experience. And it still doesn't load very well, even on a good computer. And it's just massive. That's what I mean by the illusion of choice. It's huge. It just goes on forever and ever and ever of areas set up for experience. And all these 30% ones, so I don't like running. I think this needs to change. I think ultimately it probably needs to go back to more of a PoE 1 focused Atlas tree. It was much better back when it looked something like this, you know, nostalgia trip for everyone. That was pretty good. Now, one more thing as well, having just come out of the Atlas now and stopped raging out about having to look at that. I think the change made to experience gain at Endgame was bad. I understand the reasoning behind it because you want to encourage people to try the bosses, but that should certainly maybe be the case for Tier 0 or Tier 1. At the very least, this should be an option, like a please don't hurt me daddy mode. And then I don't lose my experience, but I don't gain any either because I'm trying to learn the game, fine. But by limiting our only way to get experience as grinding that Atlas, that is going to burn your players out really fast. There was already little reward to actually doing this endgame content because of the amount of nerfs that were done to nearly all of the boss drops across the board, and then to take the experience away as well, that's kind of just neutered the entire endgame. Every piece of endgame content that was there in 0.1 was made objectively worse in 0.2, and it not giving experience, I think, really catalyzes that because there is just no point to run it. There's no point. It would be the cheaper alternative to go and run simulacrums or breaches, but that's not viable. The only thing you can do is run these maps. I think the optionality of getting experience from this content needs to be added into the game, and I think that's very important, especially as new endgame content comes out. I think without that, you're going to find that you lose a lot of people that would otherwise be quite interested to keep playing, because there's that slight power creep that's going on, there's that impending dopamine, but you don't get that if you're doing the endgame content and getting nothing. And on that, I would not recommend going to 100 now. I would not recommend even looking at it this league. It's too expensive, it takes too much time, and honestly, the user experience of going through the Atlas for that long is immeasurably frustrating. That being said, I still very much enjoy this game, and I'm still very much looking forward to 0.3. I hope that some changes come to the end game to make it a lot more engaging, so that the last month or two of the league is actually spent doing some more interesting stuff. And on that, thank you all for those that supported me through this journey. It's been absolutely amazing. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Agree or disagree, let me know in the comments, and I will catch you in the next video. Looking at these waystones, as I've said, these were around...
Daddy, you're my daddy.
Thank you. Thank you for subscribing. I forgot to turn off the sub alerts.